On a call with me is someone that we know and love, and they have a brand new album, an EP out. It is Tunde Baiyewu, and you would know him from the Lighthouse Family, but he has chosen to come and borrow some South Africans for his new EP. Tunde, hello, welcome to Jack Rand FM.
Hey, thanks for having me. Hi, Danny. Yes, I love that. I love the way you said I've come to because yeah, I am doing that. I'm guilty of that. Borrowing some South Africans. I
But
like it.
but that's okay. Was it George Brown that said if you see someone do something that you like, you should borrow it?
Absolutely. Or
Yeah,
or at least be inspired by it if you can.
100%. Okay, so
Yeah.
so obviously you've been in the industry for a very long time. You have seen music from around the world, and I'm sure that you have collaborated with people from around the world. Why did you choose South Africans? Because I mean, this EP is there's a lot of South Africans on this EP.
Yes. Well, that's true. Well, first things first, I just thinking of my history, like, you know, Lighthouse Family and all that sort of stuff. I don't really think I've ever collaborated with anybody outside of Lighthouse Family. And I mean, yeah, I've made solo records outside of Lighthouse Family, and on those records, I've had people like doing sort of like background vocals, but they were just mainly solo records. So this particular record is the first time I've actually gone out on a limb and out of my way to collaborate with other artists. And firstly, I have to say it's always been something that I've wanted to do. It's been there and in the back of my mind, especially, considering that I mean, I was born in London, but I grew up in Nigeria. Went back to Nigeria with my mother at the age of 5 after living in and being born in the UK. And so I grew up in Lagos. I was a kid in the choir in the church. And so loved singing and being a chorister and stuff like that. But yeah, just after the whole light and during Lighthouse Family, I've always fancied the idea of making a record with other artists, particularly African artists. But I think the situation is, I mean, anybody that's been in a band, a successful band, would probably be able to relate to this. When you're in a band, um, everybody has to agree to any new or novel idea, right? And the moment one person in the band doesn't agree and there's no consensus, then it doesn't matter how good the idea might seem at the time. It just it just gets dropped by the wayside and never happens. So, but this time around, what had happened was I got a call. A friend of mine in South Africa who works in the music industry out there had reached out to me through my Lighthouse Family manager, and he had asked the question if, oh, how would Tunde fancy, doing some collaborations or featuring on some African artists' records and stuff like that. And I thought, wow, yeah, of course. So I listened to some of the stuff. They sent me a bunch of things, and I listened to it. And I thought, well, yeah, that's a no-brainer for me. It's definitely something I would love to do. And fortunately for me, at the time, I had just finished making this solo record. So I had the record with just me singing all the songs, and I just sat on it for a while because I wasn't sure what exactly to do with it. So when this call came from South Africa, and of course the answer to me was like, "Oh yeah, great idea." It just reignited the whole progression of moving forward with that idea and doing what we've done. And that whole process, it takes a while. Maybe it took about just over a year or close to 2 years to complete because we'd have to send the tracks over to like and speak and find the artist and stuff like that. But yeah, the idea, to cut a long story short, the idea actually came from South Africa itself through a friend that had asked the question. And I was open to the idea. And sometime later, here you have it, a record. And you're right, yeah. The first what you're hearing at the moment, what people are hearing right now, is just the first EP. It's the first outing. It's just three
Yeah.
tracks, but it's an album's worth of stuff.
I That's what I was going to ask you because we've got this is EP1. So how
Yes.
many EPs are we getting?
Well, this it all depends on the label in South Africa and the stuff that happens with all the other because we have one of the things that the label in South Africa had said was like, after we had explored the whole South Africa angle, he had said, "Oh, it would be great if we can get," and I thought this was true as well anyway. But he said, it'd be great if we can get some other Africans
Mm.
outside of South Africa.
Mm.
So I then went off and explored, and I have friends. Like I said, I grew up in Nigeria. I've known people in Nigeria. I have friends in Nigeria, and I reached out to them, and then we started that other process of fishing for like people in other parts of Africa to put on the record. So you have South Africans, but you have other parts of Africa as well. I mean, the thing to remember is like, Africa is a fairly large
Yeah.
continent, right? And of all the countries, I mean, and if you have an EP if you have an album, I'm the traditionalist in terms of albums. I always think, well, an album, not more than 10 songs is
Yeah.
what constitutes an album for me. Any more than that, I think the listener's attention tends to sort of weaken a bit and drift off. So, if you have an album of like 10 tracks, but you have a pot of gold that Africa is, a pot of gold of like all those countries to pick from, then you are kind of limited in the number of people you can put on that record.
Yeah.
Save for when in the future, if you make another one of those records, then you can explore again and stuff. So yeah, there's an album's worth of stuff. It includes quite a few South Africans, but it also includes a lot of other Africans.
I really, really am looking forward to more. I think this is a really great way to showcase the diversity in the music that we have here. Because just looking at
Yeah.
some of the artists that you've collaborated with, they're very, very diverse and very different.
Mm.
How did you go about choosing who made it?
Um, yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, I think one of the things that happened was when my friends in South Africa and other parts of Africa started to suggest, because you have to be open. People suggest, everybody has an idea of who they think would be great for that sort of
Mm,
project. And so they send you all these ideas of all these different people. And some of them and when you approach some of them, I have to say, not necessarily all the Africans warmed to the idea because I mean, Africa, there's a lot going on in Africa at the moment, especially with regards to the arts, music in particular. And everybody wants a little piece of that. Everybody
yeah.
from outside of Africa wants a piece of that. There's the Piano stuff going on, there's the Afrobeat stuff going on, and all the other parts of Africa. So when we were talking to some of these artists and the names that were put forward, not necessarily all the artists thought, yeah, I'd want to do that. Because I don't know, for some reason, a lot of them probably just wanted to do something that was Piano or Afro beats
Yeah,
based.
I see that.
So not necessarily all of them got it. So, but the ones that did, and when it clicked, what would happen generally is like a lot of the times the songs that we had in the pot would kind of, to me anyway, would gravitate towards certain particular artists.
Okay.
And like, because a lot of the songs on the record, I mean, there's some original songs, but they're also like a bunch of covers. And a lot of those songs come out of a particular era that I grew up listening to the music of that time, which is mainly the 70s and the troubadours in the 70s. People like James Taylor and, you know, Bill Withers, as you probably heard, and bands like America and stuff like that. So a lot of those songs, because the way they were written and the spirit that they carried, the artist needed to to be of the same to be able to understand it, basically. I mean, a song like, for instance, I Need You, which has PJ Powers on it, the expression and the way that song is written and the sentiment of it can only truly be expressed by an artist like PJ Powers, because she comes with the weight of her experience and growing up in a country like South Africa and all the things that South Africa has been through, and in particular her connection with like Nelson Mandela and stuff like that. So a lot of the time, what would happen, like, you'd have the artist, you have these bunch of songs, and then the song literally in a way kind of pick the artist, if you know what I mean. And that was what happened. And that sort of thing, you can't rush it, you can't force it,
Yeah.
you know, because you really you want it to feel and sound like that particular artist was the one that wrote that particular song. You know, they have to truly believe what they are singing in order to breathe that new life, or what I call the plus factor, you know, that extra thing that you can inject to make the song fresh and new to a new generation. And a lot of the artists, they did that, and they have that in them in spades. You know, they brought their own Africanness. You know, like we all, I know, like I said before, Africa is huge and wide, and but overall, the overarching thing, from my point of view, because I grew up there as well, is that we all speak the same language,
Mm.
and yeah, it might be a different native tongue, but you know an African when you hear an African or when you see an African. And and so we had that common, you know, factor. So they all brought, you know, as I said, to speak the same language. So they brought their own DNA, and that is what kind of just brought the whole thing to life, to make it distinctly. I mean, it's African, you know, like I was speaking to somebody the other day and I said, you know, like there's this sort of like to me, and it's just my observation. Sometimes there can be a bit of a myopic view in terms of what African music is
Mm.
to people outside of that continent. But we know, you know, that it's so, like you said, you know, the question you asked at the beginning is like the diversity of that continent. We know it can be so diverse. There's so much to explore.
Yeah.
That what I'm hoping people will get from this is their perception or view of what African music is. Hopefully, will be very much broadened and expanded, so that people just don't think of African music as either
Amapiano.
amapiano
Yeah.
or Afrobeats or stuff like that. There's so much more to it. But like I said, the real key, the real heart of it comes out of the language.
Mm.
It's the language. And that's one of the things we encouraged all the artists to not shy away from. Because sometimes some of them wanted to do that. They just wanted to, they're highly capable, they're great performers, great singers. And they give you this stuff and you think, oh, yeah, I know you can sound like Whitney Houston. I know you can do all that.
Mm.
But that's not what we want. You know, we want you sing in your native tongue. In fact, I want you to,
Yeah.
because that is what's gonna bring the African spirit to the project and make it unique.
I'm very, very excited for this project. And I have to tell you that overarchingly, the message that I'm getting from you is be open to the magic, because you were open to the magic. And now, look, you've created the magic. You trusted that the songs would find their artists, and they did. And here we are. So I think
Yeah,
we can all learn from this. Be open to the magic.
absolutely. You know, I love that. I love that phrase. Yeah, and that is the thing. You know, you need to approach it and come to it with an open heart and then an open mind, and just let the creativity flow, but not don't shy away from being your genuine self as an artist. And I mean, I remember the first solo record I made outside of Lighthouse Family was I was signed to Sony at the time, and on one of the songs on that record, I sang in my native tongue, Yoruba, which is one of the Nigerian languages that I speak because I grew up there. So I sang that I sang in that language on that record. And I'm talking about, this is a record that I released in, I think it was 2004. I'm not, you know, that was such a long time ago. So, I mean, now today you hear an piano track anywhere in the world, or an Afrobeat track, and people are singing their native tongues, and it's like the world is willing to listen. People go out of their way to kind of try and learn and understand. They're open in their own way, as you said,
Mm.
open to that magic, right? And like, oh, I don't understand what they're saying, but I want to go and find out what it means.
Mm.
And it's a bit like somebody talking to you, but not necessarily shouting, but whispering or talking quietly. And what it does, it forces you to listen more intently. It
Mm.
pulls you in. You listen closely to what they're saying. It's the same thing that happens in music. And yeah, you're absolutely correct. You know, be open to the magic, don't just don't shy away from who and what you are as a as an artist and whatever your cultural background is, in particular African.
Now, Tunde, I obviously, with all of the South Africans on here, where the next question is, are you going to come to South Africa to perform this at any point to do a little bit
Of
of a tour?
of course,
Ah,
this is what we all you know, the truth of the matter is we make records, right? We write songs first of all as artists for ourselves, just to make yourself feel good, you know, or to express an emotion and feeling. And then you make a record and all this sort of stuff. But really, where it truly comes alive. Because even on a record, like if you're streaming a record or you've got a CD back in the, I don't know, those even
love,
exist
love.
anymore, right? It's like it's the same recording, it's the same thing that's just repeated over and over, right? Like when you're listening on that level. But where the magic really happens and it comes alive is when you have to go out, which is what we all yearn for as artists, to perform those songs live in front of an audience and see and be a part of the whole camaraderie of that. And so, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, that is always the end goal. I mean, I came to for the first time. This was like a how many months? Maybe 3 months ago or 4 months ago, something like that. We were in Cape Town because we had to. We did a. I did a. It was a jazz festival. I came over there to do,
Oh, yeah.
and that was my first time performing in Africa. Period. I mean, I'm Nigerian, but I haven't even been to. I go to Nigeria, like you know, regularly with friends, and I sneak in there and hang out and then come back out. But even in Nigeria, I've never performed live. So we did that for the first time in Cape Town just a few months ago. And I think the rest of the band, everybody was like, they loved it. So, I mean, I loved it. It goes without saying. Um, and like I said before, I'd actually even, when I released that, my very first solo record, the record company sent me out to Johannesburg. That's where I came to, and I was there for about a week, and they really looked after me to promote that record and talk about the record. So I'd already had a taste of South Africa. So when we went just this few months ago, the band, everybody was just like, "Oh, when are we gonna come back and do a proper tour of this place?" Like people can't wait. So yeah, I mean, we're just waiting for things to kind of happen in an organic way and do their own thing. But that's definitely part of the plan. We definitely want to come over there, do some shows and perform and go all over Africa, just
Good.
to, you know, it's definitely one of the things I'm looking forward to doing.
Okay. Well, we have it now on national radio, so I'm holding you. No pressure, but I'm holding you to it.
Sure.
Tunde, for your fans here in South Africa, do you have a message of love and appreciation for them?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I said, come to South Africa. I've been there a few times. I came a few other times outside of music just to visit friends because I've got a lot of friends who live out there. And just coming out there, like I said, this last few months ago, I've kind of, it's kind of just sparked my memory of how beautiful that place is. And I just want to say, like, I hope people go and listen to the EP. It's just 3 tracks, but there's an album on its way. There might be EP2 before the album, or it might just be the album. But just go and listen and keep in mind that what you're listening to these are people from your country, from your neck of the woods, and they are all extremely talented. And they bring the African DNA. And I hope, when people listen to it, I hope they warm to the record because a lot of work by these South Africans and these Africans have gone into making the record. They put a lot of love into it. And I just hope it'll make that's what music is about. It's like the most natural form of escapism. You listen to a piece of music that just takes you on a journey and you forget the 9 to 5 and all that stuff for even if it's just for 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
So I hope it will have that effect on people, and I hope it will expand your perception of what African music can be.